In the glittering world of fame, we celebrate big names, music icons, and film legends. But behind the applause and flashing lights, some of these stars were fighting battles far closer to home. Few could have imagined that on their rise to the top, their greatest obstacles wouldn't come from the industry, but from the very people who brought them into the world. The ones meant to protect and nurture them became the source of deep emotional scars, trauma that followed these stars for the rest of their lives. And in the 15 stories you're about to hear, the truth will be laid bare about the most toxic parents of black celebrities. Parents who beat, controlled, exploited, and forced their children into fame, often crossing into brutal abuse without a trace of mercy. Diana Ross. Diana Ross. Brutally abused by her own father in front of the entire family. Diana Ross, one of the greatest icons in world music, is an undeniable force in music history, celebrated for her groundbreaking achievements and lasting influence. She stepped into the spotlight at an incredibly young age, rising to fame as the radiant lead of the Supremes before conquering the world as a legendary solo artist. Her voice, style, and presence reshaped popular music forever. But long before the applause, the awards, and the glory, Diana endured a childhood marked by pain, fear, and wounds that never truly healed. When Diana was just 6 years old, her family lived in a cramped apartment in Detroit's Brewster Projects, where 8 people were packed into 3 dim, suffocating rooms. Her father, Fred Ross Sr., a World War II veteran, struggled to find steady work and slowly disappeared into alcoholism. Night after night, he stumbled home drunk, and violence became a grim routine. Brutal beatings were not rare moments of rage, they were daily terror. One night, he slammed a beer bottle onto the table, his eyes glassy with fury, before lunging at Diana's mother and dragging her across the floor in front of all 6 children. His fists twisted into her mother's hair, yanking her body like she was nothing more than a lifeless object. Unable to stay silent, young Diana stepped forward to protect her mother, only to become the next target. Her father turned on her with savage force, leaving a mark far deeper than bruises. Many nights, Diana lay frozen beneath her blanket, clenching her teeth, trembling, barely daring to breathe as screams, curses, and the dull thuds of violence echoed through the cold apartment. In winter, her father once chased the entire family out of the house for no reason at all, declaring, "This is my house. I do what I want." Her mother quietly led the children out the back door, seeking refuge with neighbors, just to escape the freezing cold and the madness of a drunken, violent man. After enduring this again and again, Diana developed a heartbreaking survival instinct. She slept with a pair of shoes tucked beneath her pillow, always ready to run. That was the only sense of safety she knew in a home ruled by chaos and fear. The physical pain faded, but the emotional scars never did. Even after escaping that hell, Diana carried wounds that time could not erase. As an adult, those childhood traumas quietly shaped her relationships. She often gravitated toward weaker partners she could control, a subconscious shield against the terrifying power her father once held over her life. Yet those same scars also fueled her determination to escape, to rise, to transform pain into purpose. Music became her refuge, her rebellion, her way out. On long nights, sitting outside her home, Diana dreamed of a future without screams, without fists, without fear, a life defined by freedom. And against all odds, she made that dream real. She survived the darkness, shattered the limits placed upon her, and emerged as one of the greatest female singers of all time. Ike Turner. Ike Turner's life was carved by violence long before he ever touched a stage, and that violence would later spill into Tina Turner's world like a sharpened blade. In the history of R&B, Ike Turner is remembered as a musical architect, the founder of the Ike and Tina Turner Revue and a man who helped shape the sound of modern soul. Yet his legacy is forever shadowed by the darkness that followed him from childhood. In 1937, when Ike was only 6 years old, his innocence was shattered by a scene no child should ever witness. His biological father, a respected pastor, was tied to a tree on their own porch and beaten with baseball bats by white men, punished simply for preaching words they deemed too free. Though his father survived, he was left partially paralyzed, and the trauma from that night never loosened its grip on Ike's mind. Less than a year later, his mother remarried an alcoholic truck driver named Willie Kazart, and the terror deepened. Weekend after weekend, when the alcohol took over, Ike was dragged to the pig pen and forced to kneel on dry corn kernels while being whipped with electrical cords, sometimes without cause, sometimes over imagined slights. "You looking at me like you want to kill me?" his stepfather would sneer as he struck. The abuse was relentless. Once, Ike was beaten until he blacked out. When he came to, he was tied to a post, left lying in pig manure through the night, abandoned and unheard. His mother tried to intervene, but her resistance only brought more brutality. When she stood up for her son, she was beaten so severely that her arm was broken. The message was clear: no one in that house was safe. By age 11, the weight became unbearable. His mother fled, but she left Ike behind. Alone with his abuser, the boy continued growing up inside a prison of fear and pain. Those years etched anger and instability deep into Ike's soul. The frightened child hardened into a man consumed by unresolved rage and trauma. And tragically, the violence that once defined his childhood resurfaced in his adulthood. With Tina Turner, Ike repeated the same patterns of abuse he had once endured, trapping himself in a brutal cycle where pain breeds pain. In the end, Ike Turner's childhood trauma didn't just haunt his life, it helped destroy it. It stained his career, fractured his humanity, and left permanent scars on the hearts of those who once admired him, turning a musical pioneer into a cautionary tale of how unhealed trauma can echo across generations. Richard Pryor. To mention Richard Pryor is to invoke a comedy legend, a fearless genius who reshaped American entertainment forever. He was the first black comedian to bring raw, unfiltered truth to the stage, boldly confronting race, pain, and society's ugliest contradictions. But behind the laughter and the lightning-fast wit was a childhood scarred by brutality, neglect, and unspeakable trauma. Richard Pryor did not grow up with love or protection. He was raised inside a brothel run by his grandmother, Marie Carter, a 3-story, 14-room house where prostitutes worked and survival meant silence. From 1944 to 1952, that brothel was his world. His mother, Gertrude, worked there too, but she was never a nurturing presence. She often forced young Richard to stand guard outside her bedroom, listening for customers. Drunk most nights, she beat him with her high heels if he cried or made a sound that interrupted her work. For Richard, home was hell on earth. In 1947, at just 7 years old, Richard became the victim of a predatory teenager in the brothel district. But the nightmare didn't end there. For 2 years, he was repeatedly abused by a local priest, a man respected by the church, someone meant to protect children, not destroy them. The most devastating truth was that Richard's grandmother knew. She did nothing. Worse, she mocked him, dismissed his pain, and treated his suffering as normal. In that house, a child's innocence was stripped away, and his childhood was stolen without mercy. His father, Leroy Buck Pryor, offered no refuge. A boxer and a pimp, Buck regularly beat both Richard and his mother, claiming violence was a form of discipline. Surrounded by cruelty, betrayal, and indifference, Richard lost his faith in humanity before he was old enough to understand it. The physical and emotional wounds carved into him would follow him for decades. As an adult, Richard tried to numb that pain. Drugs, especially cocaine, became an escape, a temporary silence for lifelong anguish. By 1980, at his lowest point, he set himself on fire in an act of self-destruction that shocked the world. It was madness, but it was also a turning point. From the ashes of that moment, Richard began the painful process of confronting his demons. Rising from an abused child to one of the greatest artists of all time, Richard Pryor's resilience was nothing short of extraordinary. His pain became his power, and his truth changed comedy forever. Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye. A blood-soaked path that ended in a brutal death at the hands of the man who gave him life. Marvin Gaye was one of America's greatest musical legends, gifting the world timeless anthems like What's Going On and Sexual Healing. His voice healed millions of hearts. Yet behind those beautiful melodies lived a past drowned in tears, fear, and cruelty. From 1942 to 1957, Marvin grew up in a cramped wooden house ruled by his father, Pastor Marvin Gaye Sr., a rigid man and blind devotee of the House of God sect. His father believed discipline meant domination. From the age of 3, Marvin was forced to stand on the pulpit, singing hymns for hours. One wrong note, one small mistake, and he was dragged to the basement and viciously whipped. Beatings became as routine as meals, sometimes for wearing white socks instead of black, for laughing during prayer, or simply because his father decided he wasn't humble enough. Those lashes didn't just tear his skin, they shattered his spirit. Marvin's mother tried to protect her son, but she too was trapped in her husband's violence. She was beaten so severely she was once hospitalized, yet she stayed, clinging to the hope that faith would someday soften her husband's heart. Instead, it was Marvin, the innocent, broken child, who paid the highest price for her silence. His childhood passed without laughter, without tenderness, filled only with fear, punishment, and suffocating loneliness. Music became Marvin's escape, his only salvation, but even music couldn't fully save him. Haunted by childhood pain and emotional emptiness, he turned to sex and drugs to numb the wounds he never learned how to heal. Those addictions slowly unraveled everything he built. On April 1, 1984, after surviving fame, addiction, and countless personal storms, Marvin once again witnessed his father beating his mother. This time, he refused to stay silent. He intervened. Enraged, Marvin Gaye Sr. grabbed a gun and fired. 2 shots rang out, and Marvin collapsed to the floor. Marvin Gaye, a man who spent his entire life searching for the love of a father he never truly had, died at the hands of the very man whose affection he had always longed for. Sammy Davis Jr. From a human cash machine to a living legend, Sammy Davis Jr. became one of the most celebrated entertainers of the 20th century. A rare, multi-talented force, master of dance, song, and acting, he stood as an undeniable icon of American show business. But behind the glittering lights and thunderous applause was a life that felt mechanical, tightly controlled, and haunted by lifelong pain. At just 2 years and 9 months old, Sammy was pulled into the brutal world of vaudeville. His father, Sammy Davis Sr., and his uncle Will Maston molded him not as a child, but as a product. On stage, he was called Silent Sam, a nickname that quietly exposed the cruelty behind the curtain. He had no childhood, no friends, no school, no freedom. His days were consumed by 14 to 16 hours of relentless rehearsals, where perfection was demanded and mistakes were punished. Miss a step and belts followed. Once, after being beaten for hours, Sammy collapsed on stage mid-performance. When he regained consciousness, there was no concern, no comfort, only the order to continue. The show had to go on. In the 1930s, Sammy was earning thousands of dollars a week, yet every cent went straight into his father and uncle's pockets. He received only a few pennies for candy, far too little to buy even a fragment of childhood joy. As he grew older, Sammy remained trapped in their shadow, conditioned to believe his only worth was what he could earn. It wasn't until 1954, at the age of 29, that he finally found the courage to demand his rightful share. The response was swift and devastating, a sharp slap from his father, delivered in front of the entire troupe. That moment shattered something deep inside him, a heart that had spent a lifetime longing for love and approval. In the years that followed, Sammy turned to gambling and alcohol, desperate escapes from wounds that never healed. He developed a frightening need to please, forever chasing validation. Every performance became more than passion. It was a plea for the love he never received from his father. Despite his immense success, despite becoming a legend, Sammy Davis Jr. never fully escaped his father's shadow. All his life, he searched for recognition from the man who never saw him as a son, only as a money machine. James Brown. James Brown. The brutal price of becoming the godfather of soul. James Brown stands as one of the greatest music legends of all time. With timeless anthems like I Got You, I Feel Good, and Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, he didn't just make hits, he reshaped the entire music industry, laying the foundation for soul and funk. But long before the spotlight found him, James survived a childhood drenched in darkness and cruelty. From 1937 to 1946, his family lived in a crumbling shack in Barnwell, South Carolina. No electricity, no running water, only endless labor and despair. His father, Joe Gardner Brown, was a cotton picker and moonshine bootlegger, violent and merciless. By the age of 5, James was forced to wake at 4 a.m., picking cotton until nightfall, hauling at least 50 pounds a day. Falling short meant savage beatings. Once, he was beaten so badly his ribs broke, simply for working too slowly. No one intervened. No one dared. The abuse went deeper. Joe forced the boy to dance for American soldiers in bars, pocketing the tips to buy alcohol and women, right in front of his son. In 1941, James' mother fled the home, unable to endure the violence. James was left behind to face it alone. His father even sold the boy's only pair of shoes for booze, followed by another near-fatal beating. At just 9 years old, James ran away. He drifted into a brothel in Augusta, where he survived by mopping floors, running errands, and escorting clients, earning nothing but a place to sleep. Those years never left him. His childhood held no joy, no tenderness, only abandonment and brutality. The scars carved into his body sank deeper into his soul, shaping a man fueled by rage, fear, and mistrust. And even at the height of his fame, the past refused to loosen its grip. James Brown never truly found peace in love or marriage. The violence he endured became the violence he repeated, infamously using the same spiked belt his father once wielded. Though he conquered the world with music, James Brown could never fully escape the shadow of his childhood, a legacy of pain that fame could not erase. Little Richard. Little Richard. A lifetime spent running from the shadow of a cruel father. Little Richard, the rock and roll icon who set stages ablaze with his piercing falsetto and untamed performances, helped lay the very foundation of modern rock, inspiring legends from Elvis Presley to the Beatles. Under the spotlight, he burned bright. But behind the music, his childhood was suffocatingly dark. From 1938 to 1947, in a decaying wooden house in Macon, Georgia, Richard grew up surrounded by the sharp stench of moonshine and prayers tangled with curses. He was one of 12 children, crowded, poor, and starved of tenderness. His father, Charles Penniman, preached from the pulpit by day and ran bootleg liquor by night. The man who spoke of God's love had none for his own son. Richard loved slipping into his mother's dresses, painting his lips, moving through the world light as air. For that, he was branded sinful. His father would seize him by the hair, drag him into the backyard, and beat him with a baseball bat for dressing like a girl. Still, Richard refused to surrender who he was. He clung to music, kept sneaking the clothes, kept singing. And each time his father found out, the punishments grew longer, harsher, more brutal. At just 12 years old, Richard was tied to a porch post in the cold rain, barefoot, wearing only a thin shirt, left shivering all night for daring to sing what his father called devil music. He survived until morning, but something inside him died. The belief that his family could ever accept his true self was gone forever. From then on, Richard grew defiant, wearing toughness like armor and pushing himself to be louder, wilder, more outrageous than anyone else. At 15, after his father discovered a secret performance at a gay bar, the first place Richard ever felt he belonged, he was thrown out. His father handed him a torn suitcase and $5. That was it. Richard stepped into the world fueled by pain and resentment, and rock and roll became the outlet for his fury, the way he stayed alive. The scars of that childhood followed him to the end. Though he became world famous, he never escaped the ache of rejection from the man who gave him life. He turned to religion seeking salvation, then to excess seeking relief, heroin, cocaine, pleasure without limits. On stage, little Richard burned like pure fire. Off stage, he slowly consumed himself. That inner torment, the war between who he was and who he was told he could never be, clung to him until his final breath. Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson. A terrifying obsession, and wounds that never truly healed. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, a name that echoed farther than any other in music history. Gifted with extraordinary talent in singing, dancing, and songwriting, he created legendary hits and unforgettable performances that left the world in awe. Yet behind the glittering spotlight was a childhood soaked in fear. From 1963 to 1975, Michael lived with his 8 siblings in a dilapidated house in Gary, Indiana. Just 2 bedrooms, cramped, suffocating. But the most horrifying part wasn't the lack of space. It was the brutal training imposed by his father, Joe Jackson, beginning when Michael was only 4 years old. Every single day, Joe forced the children to rehearse for 6 to 8 hours. One wrong note, one missed step, and punishment came instantly. Michael was slapped, beaten, humiliated. Scenes of him being struck until he wet himself, yet still forced to dance in soaked clothes, eyes filled with tears but too afraid to cry, became a tragic routine of his childhood. Joe didn't stop at beatings. He reportedly poured hot oil on his son's face, then pressed burning fingers into his skin, claiming it would teach him not to fear fire. That cruelty shattered Michael's psyche. Nights were sleepless. He curled into himself, clutching a cloth beneath his pillow to wipe away silent tears. Nightmares of his father haunted him relentlessly. And Michael wasn't alone. His siblings endured the same violence. The Jackson home felt less like a family and more like a prison, ruled by fear, not love. Even when the Jackson 5 rose to fame and generated millions, the children received only a few dollars in allowance. The money flowed straight into Joe's pockets. Fame changed nothing. The pain remained. Those deep psychological scars followed Michael into adulthood, turning him reclusive, fueling self-hatred, driving endless plastic surgeries, and trapping him in dependence on powerful painkillers. In 2009, Michael Jackson died alone from a fatal dose of sleeping medication. Long before that, he had been unable to sleep without pills, searching at last for the peaceful rest his childhood had cruelly denied him. Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, a boxing legend forged by unimaginable pain. Known worldwide as Iron Mike, Tyson is etched into boxing history for his savage power and ferocious style. At just 20 years old, he became the youngest heavyweight champion the world had ever seen. But behind that iron fist was a childhood shaped by cruelty most people never knew. From 1970 to 1978, Mike's life inside a cramped Brooklyn apartment was pure terror. His mother, Lorna Smith Tyson, struggled with heroin addiction and survived through prostitution. Night after night, 7 or 8 strange men filled the apartment. Yet the true fear didn't come from the strangers. It came from his own mother. Whenever she needed drugs or an outlet for her rage, Mike became the target. One of his earliest nightmares came at just 5 years old, when his mother grabbed him by the hair and dragged him across the floor simply for looking at one of her clients the wrong way. He was beaten like a punching bag, his body collecting scars long before he understood why. By age 8, he suffered a broken collarbone after another brutal beating. He learned not to cry, because tears only brought more pain. As Mike grew, the abuse deepened. Some nights, when drugs took over his mother's mind, she forced him to stand in the living room while her guests mocked, touched, and humiliated him. At 10 years old, she threw him out into the freezing winter for eating food from the fridge. Homeless and unwanted, Mike survived by hiding in abandoned buildings and stealing just to stay alive. No one protected him. No one cared. Only loneliness and predators lurking in the shadows. Several men entered his life during those years, leaving behind acts so disturbing they helped fuel Mike's rage and rebellion. Boxing became his escape. Every punch he later threw wasn't just aimed at an opponent, it was aimed at his past. Even after fame, fortune, and dominance in the ring, Mike Tyson never escaped the emotional damage his childhood left behind. In moments of vulnerability, he broke down on television, sobbing as he spoke about the cruelty of his mother. That's when the world finally understood. The most devastating punches in boxing history were born from deep, unhealed pain. Mike Tyson's life of anger wasn't a mystery. It was the consequence of a childhood that never let him be a child. Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry. A journey forged in darkness. Today, Tyler Perry stands as a symbol of resilience, a man who rose from unimaginable pain to build one of the most powerful film empires in entertainment history. His movies and stage plays don't just draw millions of viewers, they carry the raw, aching voice of a survivor. At the heart of his work lives Medea, the fierce, unbreakable mother figure he never had, but desperately needed. Tyler Perry's childhood was anything but safe. From 1974 to 1985, he lived under the roof and the terror of his biological father, Emmett Perry Sr., a violent construction worker consumed by alcohol and rage. At just 5 years old, Tyler was stripped naked and locked inside a pitch-black closet for hours simply for talking too much. And that was only the beginning. His father routinely lashed his back with belts, then cruelly rubbed salt into the wounds to make sure the pain would never be forgotten. The abuse went far beyond beatings. On nights when Tyler's mother, a fragile, submissive woman, worked late shifts, his father entered his room and committed acts no child should ever endure. His mother knew, but paralyzed by fear of brutal retaliation, she stayed silent, forced to watch her son suffer alone. There was no one to protect Tyler, no one to save him. And for years, he didn't know how to escape. Everything changed at 16. After another savage beating left him hospitalized, Tyler reached his breaking point. He ran from that house of horror, cut all ties with his father, and even changed his last name, determined to sever himself from a legacy of violence. From that moment on, Tyler Perry was no longer a helpless boy trapped in pain, but a man resolved to reclaim his life. Out of those long, suffocating nights, Tyler Perry built a creative empire, one that transformed his trauma into power and gave hope to millions. Medea, the loud, fearless matriarch, became the mother he always dreamed of, strong, unyielding, impossible to break. In many ways, every play and every film Tyler Perry creates feels written in blood and tears, etched from the scars of a childhood that nearly destroyed him, but ultimately shaped his greatness. Mary J. Blige. Mary J. Blige. A childhood scarred by pain and betrayal at the hands of those meant to protect her. Known today as the undisputed queen of R&B, Mary J. Blige is more than the voice behind timeless hits. She is the embodiment of survival, a woman who rose from unimaginable darkness. While she stands tall at the summit of music, few realize the tears that paved her path there. Her songs are not just melodies, they are echoes of anguish born in her earliest years. From 1976 to 1985, Mary grew up in the Schlobem Gardens projects, a bullet-riddled housing complex where violence and poverty were part of everyday life. Her mother, Cora, worked exhausting night shifts, leaving young Mary alone in fear when her mother's boyfriend, Johnny, nearly 30 years old, came home. At just 5 years old, Mary endured horrors far beyond a child's worst nightmares. Johnny wasn't only violent, he shattered a child's innocence. Night after night, while her mother slept deeply after long shifts, Johnny crept into Mary's room, clamping an alcohol-reeking hand over her mouth. His threats were chilling. "Tell anyone, and I'll kill your whole family." Once, at age 7, Mary tried to scream for help, but Johnny silenced her in time. When her mother stirred, he brushed it off. "The kid's just sleepwalking." Cora believed him and went back to sleep, unknowingly or unwillingly, leaving her daughter trapped in silence. From that moment on, Mary stopped trusting anyone. She hid beneath her bed, trembling as she heard Johnny's footsteps, though she knew she couldn't hide forever. The sound of his heavy breathing drowned out everything else, leaving her feeling unsafe even in her own home. Eventually, Johnny left with another woman, and Mary escaped that demon, but not the damage he left behind. She grew into a young woman trapped in a body she despised, carrying wounds that would never fully heal. She turned razors on herself to cope with memories too painful to face. By 15, alcohol and drugs became her refuge, a way to numb the trauma. Worse still, her adult relationships mirrored the violence of her past, as she cycled through partners, desperately searching for the love she'd never known. All that pain, every betrayal, every stolen sense of safety, was poured into her music. Mary J. Blige transformed suffering into soul, turning her voice into a weapon against her past. Through raw, emotional R&B anthems, she became a symbol of resilience, rebirth, and the power of surviving what was meant to destroy you. Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston. A voice that could stop time, yet a childhood shattered in silence. Widely hailed as one of the greatest vocalists of all time, Whitney built a towering music career and etched her name forever into the hearts of fans. Timeless love songs like I Will Always Love You moved millions, proving a once-in-a-generation gift. But behind that heavenly sound was a little girl crying herself to sleep, carrying a pain few ever knew. Whitney grew up in a large house, but it was never a safe one. Between 1970 and 1975, she lived among a crowded family that included her cousin Dee Dee Warwick, already a famous singer. Dee Dee was not a protector. When Whitney was just 7 years old, she was pulled into a locked room for the first time, an act that would not end there. The abuse continued for nearly 3 years, stealing her innocence piece by piece. What hurt even more was that the family knew. Whitney's mother noticed the change, her daughter's tears, her fear, her sudden avoidance of Dee Dee. Yet instead of stepping in, she brushed it off, gently patting Whitney's head and telling her not to imagine things. Other relatives saw the same pain in the child's eyes and chose silence. Dee Dee remained the family star, untouchable, unquestioned. Every weekend, Whitney was forced to sit at the same dinner table, pretending nothing had happened. Those meals were soaked in tears no one acknowledged. That sense of betrayal, of being violated and left unprotected by the very people meant to shield her, followed Whitney into adulthood. She later confided to close friends, sobbing that she never once felt safe in her own home. Haunted by memories she couldn't escape, she turned to addiction in a desperate attempt to numb the shame and hurt. And when she married, hoping love would finally save her, she chose a man who only deepened the wounds. Pain piled onto pain. Years of trauma, dependency, and heartbreak ultimately consumed her. In 2012, the world lost Whitney Houston, but long before that, a little girl had already been lost to silence. DMX. His mother broke his arm, then abandoned him. By 13, he ran away, choosing the streets over home. Born Earl Simmons, DMX would become one of the biggest rappers of the 1990s, famous for his raw delivery, feral growl, and unmistakable intensity. But behind every barked lyric was a man forged by unimaginable trauma. DMX didn't grow up tough, he grew up terrified. He was raised in a violent, unstable household. His mother, Arnett Simmons, was only 19 when she had him. Her life was filled with abusive men, fleeting relationships, and constant chaos. Never safety, never warmth. From the age of 3, DMX suffered savage beatings for reasons he never understood. His mother and her boyfriend whipped him with mop handles until he was nearly unconscious, simply for crying. The cruelty went even further. Some weeks, she locked him alone in a pitch-black room with nothing but a bucket to use as a toilet. From Monday to Friday, she left him there because, in her words, the child tired her and she wanted peace. At 6 years old, she beat him so badly that his right arm broke. Instead of taking him to a hospital, she wrapped it in old, torn cloth and left him crying on the floor until he passed out. Love never existed in that home. The men who came through treated him no better. One boyfriend slammed his head against a concrete wall for spilling a glass of water. Eventually, the pain became unbearable. At just 13, DMX ran away, trading that house of horror for the uncertainty of the streets. Winter nights were brutal. He slept in alleys, parks, anywhere he could survive. Once, he nearly died when a truck almost ran him over as he slept outdoors. Street life hardened him. Violence, addiction, and bad choices followed. DMX would be jailed over 30 times and battle a devastating crack addiction. Yet through all the darkness, music became his release. His snarling, rage-filled raps weren't an act, they were therapy. Every verse carried the weight of childhood abuse, abandonment, and unresolved pain. Though he escaped that house, the trauma never truly left him. It haunted his music, his choices, and his life, until the very end. Dave Chappelle. A comedy legend shaped by a childhood marked by cruelty and obsession. Widely regarded as one of the greatest comedians of his generation, Chappelle is celebrated for his razor-sharp satire and masterful storytelling, humor that makes audiences laugh while forcing them to think. Yet behind the jokes lies a painful past few truly understand. After his parents divorced in 1980, Dave's life took a dark turn when his mother remarried William, a former military man who ruled the house with iron discipline. From the age of 7, Dave endured punishments no child should ever face. For minor mistakes like sloppy homework or bad grades, he was forced to kneel on raw rice for hours, forbidden to move. Worse still were the bamboo whips that left his palms blistered, images burned permanently into his memory. By 12, the violence escalated. One night at dinner, Dave laughed too loudly. That small mistake ended with his stepfather grabbing him by the collar, dragging him into the backyard, and beating him with a leather belt. His mother stood frozen, tears choking her silence, terrified that any resistance would bring violence upon her too. Unable to endure it any longer, Dave ran away and slept at friends' houses for days. At 16, when he finally threatened to leave for good, nothing changed. That was the moment he realized escape was his only option. Chappelle learned to turn pain into power, trauma into truth, and comedy into a weapon against injustice, and a way to break free from the chains of his past. That fierce need for autonomy later led him to famously walk away from a $50 million Comedy Central deal. It wasn't about money, it was about freedom, creative, personal, and spiritual. Above all, Dave feared becoming the kind of man who once terrorized him. And so, both on stage and at home, he chose a different path, controlled, thoughtful, and gentle, proving that survival can become strength and laughter can rise from the deepest wounds. Tina Turner. Tina Turner, a legendary woman who was despised from the very moment she entered this world. To the world, Tina Turner is a musical icon, an unstoppable force who delivered thunderous hits and built one of the most brilliant careers in music history. But long before the spotlight found her, Tina's life was shaped by cruelty, rejection, and violence. Her journey began in darkness. Even before she was born, Tina was unwanted. Her mother, Zelma, harbored deep resentment toward her simply because she was an illegitimate child. By the age of 5, Tina was already enduring her mother's brutality. Slaps across the face, ears yanked until they bled. All for one reason: you look too much like your father. The words cut even deeper than the blows. I never wanted you. I should have had an abortion. Those sentences echoed endlessly in Tina's young mind, while she suffered in silence. Once, her mother hurled a high-heeled shoe at her head, leaving blood on the floor, then coldly ordered Tina to clean it up, as if nothing had happened. Whenever her father came home, the violence only intensified, as though all the rage, love, and bitterness between her parents were unleashed on the child caught in between. At just 11 years old, Tina's mother abandoned her completely. Tina was sent to work for a white family, forced into exhausting labor that stripped away her childhood. She woke up at 3 a.m. to milk cows, rushed to school, then returned home to cook and work until her body gave out. There was no joy, no safety, barely even dignity. As she grew older, Tina believed she had finally found protection in a man, someone who could replace the love she lost when her father died. But instead, Ike Turner pulled her into yet another nightmare. For 17 years, she endured relentless abuse, control, and fear. Having been conditioned by her mother's violence, Tina believed suffering was all she deserved. She lived trapped in silence, stripped of self-worth. But even the most broken spirit can only be crushed so far. Tina Turner rose from the wreckage. She escaped the violence, reclaimed her voice, and rebuilt herself into a global legend, one of the greatest performers the world has ever known. Yet no amount of success could fully erase the wounds of her past. Even at the peak of her fame, the pain lingered. The words that haunted her most were not Ike's, but her mother's. I never wanted children. It was a scar that never faded, one Tina carried for the rest of her life and spoke about years later with heartbreaking honesty. These long-hidden truths reveal the extraordinary resilience of a black woman the world once admired only for her strength on stage. Behind the glamour was a child who survived unimaginable pain and still chose to shine. If this story moved you or broke your heart, share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe so we can continue uncovering the untold stories behind the legends of the entertainment industry.